Good evening, parents and guardians. Mr. Laurie here, Robert Laurie. Thanks for coming tonight. Sorry we can't be together in school. Always makes it a little more exciting, but thanks for showing up here. I'm going to try to keep this video pretty short and concise. Just want to kind of fill you in on who I am, what our class is all about, and how to stay in contact and maybe support your students at home. So first things first, I'm Robert Laurie. The class that we're going to be talking about here is U.S. Lit and Composition, 11th grade English. Teaches in 2 class periods, 1 and 2. Second period is co-taught with Mr. Ian Wells. And in both cases, the class that we're working with right now is, you're going to hear this phrase, project-based learning, a little bit in this presentation. Long story short, there are more traditional ways to teach this class, which I've done in the past, but mostly as a means to engage students and get them really interested and excited about the content and the class. I've kind of transformed this into more of a project-based situation. So you'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, so how about this first things first? Our agenda for the rest of this presentation is to talk about the curriculum, also talk about Google Classroom, which is where all of our stuff is housed. All the assignments, notes, etc. Are all going to be there for the students. I'm going to give you my email address so that we can hopefully stay in contact. And then, like I said, talk about how to support students. So here are a couple things. Last year, when we were remote, PSD asked teachers to make a learning page. And basically, this is linked on the Rocky homepage. But if you go here, check this out. It is pretty bare bones at this point because we are back in the classroom full time, which is pretty awesome. But basically here you'll find my email and a couple other things. Here's a teacher message to you, basically to the community, which includes students and parents. One thing you'll note here is that it says to email me directly. There's a link above at the top here, or just use my email, rlaurie@psdschools.org. But basically, things like Google Classroom are mentioned here. I talk about the Rocky mantra or mission statement, which is self-purpose place. And, this is something that actually we talk about quite a bit in class in these first few weeks in particular. And it's kind of something that we return to throughout the semester. On this other page, you'll find some other stuff about me. If you are interested, you can check that out. All right, so that is the learning page, PSD learning page. Here's my email, rlaurie@psdschools.org. Please use that to reach out with any questions or anything. So let's talk now a little bit about project-based learning. And on this slide, you'll see at the top, basically comparing traditional learning to project-based learning. In traditional learning, you're kind of, teacher tells you this is what you need to know and what we're going to learn. Students memorize it and they take a test or write a paper to kind of show that they've mastered or memorized whatever it is that we talked about. In a project-based learning environment, which is what we're using here in this class, a problem is presented and explored. Students and I identify what they need to know. Then we do projects such as research and creative outlets to learn and apply to solve the problem, with the ultimate plan to have some type of public presentation and possibly even community engagement. On this next slide, it shows some of the skills that are crucial to a project-based environment. And these don't go in any particular order necessarily, but this slide definitely includes a lot of my teaching philosophy and how we'll be doing things in US Lit. So if we start at the upper left, it says authenticity and relevancy, real world challenge, need, problem, concern. So this is where we'll use texts such as the seminal works of American literature through the textbook to really look at themes and issues over time. Hopefully this will spark interest in students, which then brings in some inquiry, which is research, other readings, etc. Students will have some choice and certainly a lot of voice in the class. The choice piece will come in probably later in the semester after we've done some of the selections, the readings, and the units together. Students will be able to choose full-length text that they're going to read individually or in small groups. Also their research, where they go with their research. Collaboration in the upper right hand corner is huge in project-based learning, and definitely my teaching philosophy. And especially now that we're back in the classroom and we are able to work in small teams in person, this will be a huge part of this class to kind of recontextualize what learning in teams is all about. And then we go on to employability skills. So everything we do in this class, I understand there are many outcomes for high school, such as college or university, but also jobs in the military, internships, etc. So all these skills that we're working on in this class are meant to appeal or to appease all of those needs. At the bottom right, you'll see community partnerships, and this is something I mentioned a minute ago, which is basically like in the ultimate project-based environment. We step outside of the classroom and we do authentic audiences beyond the teacher. So this is where you might come in later in the semester when you might be invited to the school for maybe like a film festival or some type of presentation by the students. Feedback and revision are huge in this class. We've already started doing that actually in the first week. Students presented little projects and gave some positive feedback and asked some probing questions. So this allowed students to kind of improve their work a little bit. Publicly presented product, we've already started that in the class and we're going to keep building. Then we have reflection. This is something that's really important. Students from last week, they might tell you that we worked on creating a work habits rubric, which is where basically students did research about like employability skills and reflected on that and created a rubric by which we're going to measure work habits in this classroom for a big part of the grade. And then, of course, content, knowledge, and skills. So, like I mentioned before, we'll be looking at a lot of the, very important works of American literature, and also, probably most importantly, using the Colorado Model Content Standards as our guide regarding skills. So, to kind of bring it all back around, skills is at the forefront of a project-based classroom, and the text, such as the readings, all that type of stuff, is it's there to support whatever skill and help students build skills. And so that's how these things are all kind of related. All right. So moving on to a couple things about, you might be wondering, how do I stay in the loop? How might I help my student from home? So here are some things that I added that might help your students succeed in this class. Number one is talk to them. That's really the most important place to start. Ask them about the specifics of what we're learning about in class. Ask them to, summarize maybe something that they've read, or to tell you about their most exciting part of the class today and maybe the most challenging part. So just having conversations with them about what's going on. A big one in language arts class would be to promote reading. So this means, maybe visits to the library. Also just kind of like maybe try to tell your students about books that you read, articles, etc. And also, once we get into reading longer texts, whether they're doing it individually as a large group, class or in small groups, you might actually read the book along with them, and then you could have even more in-depth conversations. One thing I found to be hugely important is communication. Email. I check my email constantly, and messages from you would be at the top of my priority list, whether it's a question or a concern. So definitely email. Also, one thing you could do is join the Google Classroom as a guardian, and basically to do this, you'll just need to email me with your student's name and an email, your email address. I can then add you to the Google Classroom as a guardian, and what that does is you should receive weekly updates that they don't tell you too much about the details of the assignments, but it's definitely going to fill you in on the calendar and kind of where your student stands as far as due dates and completed assignments and that type of thing. So that's one way you can kind of get an observation of what's going on. And then, of course, the more specific one would be parent views. So you can go on there, to keep an eye on the grade regularly. Certainly something I would recommend that you don't obsess over, because it can lead to, extra stress or whatever. But certainly keep an eye on things to see if there's any alarming situations. And, of course, that's also my responsibility. If a student, if their grade drops and they're missing assignments, that's what's time for me to call home. So that's also when I would be calling to check in. That also has to do with absences and stuff like that. So that kind of rounds out our back to school night. Again, very important. Communication. Please feel free to email me at rlaurie@pstschools.org anytime you have a question or concern. And I look forward to meeting you hopefully at parent-teacher conferences in a few weeks, and really looking forward to working with your children. So thank you, and have a wonderful evening.